Here. Welcome everybody to our second webinar of 2022. I'm joined by Jermaine Clark, who's our VP of Operations. Welcome, Jermaine.
Thank you, Brendan. Happy to be here. Number 2 for the year. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be great. My name is Brendan Howe. I'm the CEO of Techify. Jermaine and I do this webinar act on a monthly basis, usually on the third Wednesday of every month, and the plan for these webinars, what we do is we do about 30 minutes of content. Occasionally, if somebody pops something into the Q&A or something like that, we'll go a little bit longer, but usually about 30 minutes of content we'll go through and then ask questions, and we'll stay on and answer, not ask questions, answer questions. We will answer as many questions. We could ask some questions too, but we'll answer as many questions as come in. The idea behind these webinars is there's a lot of stuff that's been going on in terms of change with technology, particularly in the Microsoft 365 world, in the cybersecurity world. And what our goal is just to help people keep up to date with new technologies, things to think about. You log on for a half hour, 45 minutes once a month, join our webinars, and you get a good idea of what's going on in the world from a technology perspective. So speaking of webinars, our webinar next month is actually going to be on March the 30th. Because of March break, we're going to do it a little bit later in the month. March the 30th, we're going to talk about incident response plans. So what to do when you get hacked. Obviously, we want to do everything possible to prevent being hacked, but there's a chance that you're going to have a breach, that something's going to happen, and making sure you have that break glass in case of emergency type of thing, so that you can deal with the breach. Super important. So we're going to be talking about that next month, and everybody that joins the webinar will also give a template of an incident response plan too, so they can start drafting their own. And maybe we'll even make it a little bit workshop-like, but it will be good. So here's what we're talking about today: automating workflows, and we're doing a one-on-one about automating workflows. We all have, we're all in the situation where it's a tough labor market, right? It's tough to find people. There's lots of competition for people. There's folks moving to different jobs and stuff like that. So it's so critical that we give our teams the tools to succeed. And a lot of our teams want to use technology better. They want to figure out different ways, but they need to be given that guidance and that coaching and stuff like that. So we can see from our polls that from our poll this morning that a lot of people are interested in finding ways to get different applications talking to each other, locating documents, and drafting email. Looks like for the most part, people are okay with reducing paper or following up with internal team members. Overwhelmingly, the stuff that people want to automate, Jermaine, are daily repetitive tasks. And number 2 is metrics and dashboards, and number 3 is information collection and analysis tied with workflow. So
great. That'll help us frame this for the rest of the half an hour.
Yeah, and if you haven't responded to the poll yet, if you are one of about 8 or so people that haven't responded to the poll, please put your answers up in the poll there, so we can get that feedback, and we'll check back in on it in a little bit. So we want to make our staff more productive. We want to give them the tools to succeed. Here's a bit of a sense of the opportunity. We've referenced this report before, and it's a really gives good sense. There's a whole bunch of research that Forrester's did, and talked about how you can save 100 minutes a week per person with improved collaboration, information sharing. You can save 140 minutes with improved tools and information. You can save 24 minutes with secure remote access. So you think about that, that adds up to pretty close to 4 hours, a little bit more than 4 hours. How's my math, Jermaine?
About 4.5 hours a week. And one of the things that we would want to make sure that we've been talking about this for a long time, and how we're introducing where you can build that efficiency in your team and how you do that. We've done a few of these over time, and saving that about 4.5 hours a week, that's a lot of good time that people can be less stressed and have some more time to
So
work.
we've got 21 people on our staff. If we could save 4 hours a week per person, that's 2 full-time staff members that we could redeploy doing other things and doing other important work that's going to move our company forward. So that's exciting. And that doesn't even take into account the potentially 20% of people's time that they just spend looking for stuff or tracking down colleagues and that kind of thing. So it sounds like, Jermaine, that maybe people need a bit of a productivity roadmap.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you've obviously been in a couple of our webinars in the past, you know that we're all about the roadmaps. We've got a roadmap for pretty much everything that we talk about in our webinars. It does guide our principles forward. And in the past, we've had a conversation on kind of our 4 levels of productivity, of which collaboration, building adoption's been kind of the primary foundational 2, of which after that is where we really get into the place of expanding into what we're going to talk more about today, that business intelligence and how we can at a glance learn and see a lot about our businesses. And then how do we automate some of the things that are repetitive day to day that's bogging people down, whether it's email chains, reviewing documents, searching for documents. So we'll want to really tie into those and have that information that we need from our teams. Get people away from VPN, stop worrying about servers on site. And for you to get to that productivity roadmap, you really have to get through our infrastructure roadmap, because your infrastructure, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, needs to be configured the right way to ensure that you can adopt and implement a roadmap like the productivity roadmap. So
yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, you can't just kind of say, I want to automate, I want to do all this cool stuff and automate people's jobs and give them all this support without doing the foundational stuff, as you said, right? If your technology is still relying on 1990s VPN technology or old school kind of domain controllers and Active Directory and stuff like that, you're going to be limited. You're going to get to a point where you can't do the type of stuff. And you can't do one of these 5 examples of key workflow automations that we're going to talk about. So there are tons of different things that we can all do to automate workflows. We canvassed our team. We talked about it. We said, okay, we're going to give 5 examples, and we'll start with the low-hanging fruit. All right. And so if I let me just look at the poll again here. We had a bunch of feedback about locating documents was a big deal for a lot of people. Daily repetitive tasks, and document workflow was up there too. So we're going to talk about document workflow first. So this is probably, we're going to start with the simplest kind of to execute on. Have you ever seen that? It's like we've gone into a bunch of clients where we find out email attachments are going back and forth. Like, somebody's, like, multiple people, their job is to work on a document, email it to somebody else, then they do something with the document, then they email it to somebody else. Or people are emailing stuff back and forth constantly. There's different versions, there's different edits. And it's just like this mountain of emails and attachments and just back and forth. And what version? And did you save the new version on the server? Did you do this and that? And it's just like, then you get our poor guy with the red tie that just, he's screaming for help.
And that's a lot of what you see in a typical older server environment, where it's a file share. And people are just kind of like, okay, I emailed the document to this person, but then I didn't save it. Am I on R4? Is this revision 10? Wait a minute, did you save over revision 4? I can't find revision 5. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess.
And the great thing is there is a better way. right? We can work on, if we're in SharePoint, we can work on things with concurrent collaboration, right? Co-authoring is what Microsoft calls it. So you see in this example here, we have a proposal document where 3 people are working on it at the same time. And it's really easy to track and understand what changes have been made from different people, right? And you can have that continual process of collaboration, and then you remove that. It's like today's version of manual workflow is emailing attachments and sending stuff back and forth, right? It's like walking from desk to desk with a piece of paper. Well, we don't even think about doing that anymore. But now that sort of email back and forth, it gets to be a manual workflow. And then instead of having to go and create different versions and that sort of thing, if you're doing it properly, and this video is going to show us, you can just go in and you can look up different versions, right? We've got our documents here. You look up the version history, and you can choose which version, and based on who was modified, when it was modified, and you can just go back and restore. So if you don't like the changes, if I don't like the changes Jermaine made to a webinar presentation, I just go back to the previous one and say, sorry, buddy, we're not doing that.
Or, when we accidentally delete a few slides while we were working, and we're like, wait a minute, where'd that slide go? And we're like, uh-oh, let's go back to the version from 10 minutes ago and revisit what we were working on. And it's important to note here too that the versioning that you're looking at here automatically happens every significant change over the next few minutes. So your document auto saves and it cycles through. And once it's auto saved enough changes, it'll create a version of that document that's the most updated one.
Jermaine, you're probably too young for this, but those that are a little bit older will remember the early days of WordPerfect, where you'd be working on a document and you'd be like, oh, have I saved it? And before they had autosave, and you'd have like 2 hours of work you'd lose, and like a whole project or something for work or that sort of thing, because you forgot to save it.
I appreciate you trying to put me into the younger crowd here. I really do appreciate that. My first software was like the version 2 of WordPerfect. So yeah, I even had CDs for the reinstallation stuff once a CD was a thing. So you watch out. I'm up there.
Nice. All right. So speaking of repetitive tasks, why don't we get into a little bit of talking about repetitive task automation?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, well, when we think through this, one of the things that I think about a lot, I do so much communication, myself, Brendan, many of the members on our team, and we have things that we send out on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, that really gets into that realm of, well, oh man, I wish, let me just go back to my previous email I sent in the sent folder, copy 2/3 of that text, throw it into the new email. Hopefully I remembered to change everybody's names. And then I send it to the next person, because I'm doing that for 51 clients. Okay. And when you think through that, you're like, well, okay, well, what can I do to shorten the span and figure out, well, hold up a second. Why don't I just create a template that's nondescript enough, requires maybe 2 or 3 changes in key spots because it covers all of the information that I'm looking for. And then I can just go into my Outlook, click on my view templates button, load up a bunch of templates that I have, click on them, and it populates all the information I need in the email. And then all of a sudden, an email, imagine me sitting down going through trying to remember all the stuff I want to tell the client, when I can upload this, open out the information, add the tidbits that I need to add relevant to today, and shoot that off in, a quarter of the time that it would have taken to do this from scratch. It's super important.
So now all of our clients are going to know that some of your notes aren't written in original every time, but I'm sure.
And I think, you know what, I think they'll appreciate the fact that when they respond to me and they get a response within 30 minutes, they're like, oh, Jermaine's so efficient. But I'm efficient because I'm using the same tools, right?
So when anybody can go and set this up, you see the top right corner of this pane where it says view templates. when, as you mentioned, when you click that, it'll give you the opportunity. You can just, if there's an email that you send on a regular basis, just cut and paste that baby in there, create that template, and then you can just, simple repetitive workflow, drop it in there, right?
Yeah. Another one of these that we use that are, and I'm sure our clients appreciate this one too, is that we get a nice detailed report that we send out at the end of each of our proactive visits with our clients. And when we go through that, one of the key things that we had was building consistency with our team, because we could see internally, it would look a different way. It would, on the days that you send them out, depending on whether the person was in a rush or the visit ended late, there would be missing notes, things like that. So what we did was we went through and we created a specific template that we can send out to our clients that had all the relevant information pulled in. We just select the date, type in the information for that specific client, the contact that we want to send it to, and the form fills out, comes in its standard format, and with all the key information that a client would want to see from that proactive visit that day. And it then makes the end of day report, even if the person's in a rush, easy enough to paste the 2 documents in, fill out a little bit of information, and send it off. And in the minute 25 seconds that this video is running is actually all the time that it will take any one of our technical team to fill out the information and send it over to our clients. So our clients get a standard, robust, not fraught with errors report that comes back to them, and voila, our team's done. So repetitive task, we've cut the time down. Nobody's cutting and pasting numbers into documents or any of that. This stuff gets pulled through right away, and then you get an email with the attachments that are in there and a beautifully standardized report, which is important because then it's a repeatable task and you can get it done very quickly.
Yeah, so you're saying accuracy, professionalism, and like obviously the examples that everybody is going to have are going to be a little bit different. We're showing you some of ours to stimulate thinking, but it's those repetitive tasks that are important, but they're going to happen over and over again. So how do we make them quicker? So we enable our staff to do them a little bit better. Like another example that we talk about just one other example we talk about sometimes is word templates, right? So like your letterhead, or used to be like you send a fax and you'd have like a fax template, but different letterhead or different proposal templates or stuff like that, you can get all that stuff into Microsoft Word, so it's really easy for people to access.
Yeah, and that's important to note. The reason this example was pertinent for us as well is that a lot of the information gets put into that form, but it actually is transformed. The documents we added to the folder earlier was actually Word templates built to collect information for our clients as well from those reports. So it's all about the templates, in Word.
Yeah, for sure. And what's this one?
So this one's kind of cool. We've got lots of clients that have warehouses. They take a lot of POs, purchase orders coming in, requests for equipment, requests for shipping, things like that. And they've got specific people in charge of dealing with each of those. And in a SharePoint environment, one of the cool things that you can do as a novice, because the video for doing this is like 3 slides, which I've included here. You click on it, you go right click on the person or the document, you drop it in and say, hey, I'd like to run a Power Automate flow, and I'm going to send a customized email to my staff member for every purchase order that comes in that they need to deal with. Right now, if you think about it, on a regular day, a person would go to the folder to check, okay, how many new purchase orders have come in? Whereas if we create a standardized workflow, that we can now go ahead and create an email template that we want to send to each of the staff members for whichever folder, whether it's purchase orders, whether it's invoices, whatever the situation is. You can apply this to anything, create that folder, a purchase order request comes into your environment via your website or something, gets deposited in your SharePoint. We create, the SharePoint automatically says, oh, there's a new folder, a new file that just entered here. Let me send an email to Jim Jones with this information in it, and we can shape that up. You set it up one time, all the information the person needs to know from the PO comes to them in an email. And then instead of them going and checking the folder and they're like, oh, you know, I had 25 orders, that's why I accidentally missed 4. Well, okay, you've got an email for each order now, and you can knock those off of your list and clear your inbox out, which without ever having to go to that folder, right? And then in terms of tracking now, part as a business owner, well, how many orders came in yesterday? How many emails got sent to my team? Is this thing working properly? And you can see here, because we set this up for the demo, of course, it just says, you know, February 15th, we sent 1 email was generated. But imagine that over a 28-day run, this folder and the reporting here will say every single entry. So if a client come back and says, hey, you know, I sent you this thing since Wednesday, you can go in here and say, okay, you know, can I check the logs here to see what's happened and how I can get back to that client immediately, right? So it's super easy, and it's all set up to automate.
In manual task in this situation is somebody is going and searching. Is something there? Is there something new? They're looking. They're doing something.
Hit the refresh button.
And then there's no point to do that, right? You just get notified when something's there.
Absolutely. I love this one. It's good. And it takes like 10 seconds to create, which is awesome. All right. Look, why don't we move on to the next one? Because I'm excited for us to get through these ones. Why don't you take the collecting information?
All right. So here's one of the things we've seen repeatedly across different businesses, how information is collected, how it's processed. And so we wanted to give some different examples, and we'll start from the low-hanging fruit and then get a little bit more complicated. So frequently we ask people for feedback, right? Do you want to have chicken or beef at the wedding? Or maybe other questions, right? Simple little thing you can do in Outlook when you send an email, you can use voting buttons. And so that somebody can just click yes or no, or chicken or beef, or whatever the answer is. So a simple way to get feedback that is not getting 10 emails and then reading through 10 different emails in your inbox. We progress a little bit more. You can go into Teams, you can use Poly, you can use Poly polls. And that simple, quick way to poll your staff. You could poll people in a meeting, you could poll people outside a meeting, on a team, various things like that. And you can get that feedback right away. Again, without emails, without kind of having to parse through stuff and understand it. And then we go another step further and we use Microsoft Forms. And Microsoft Forms gives a little bit more customizable ability to collect information, right? You can see on the screen, there's different types of questions. It'll give you question suggestions. You can multiple choice, fill in the blank. I feel like I'm talking about my school history. Event, like an example, you want to get people's feedback on an event, and then you get analysis of the feedback that you have. So if you can move, one of the things we've done, I'd say successfully in our business, whenever we're looking for information, feedback on a quarterly basis from our staff, you know, we're going to open again. What do you want to see? What kind of support? That sort of stuff. We don't send it through email. We just send it through forms. People can do it on their form. They are on their phone. They can do it on their computer. It makes
wherever it's convenient to access the form. And part of that too, you can create form templates. So if you know, on a regular basis, we collect quarterly feedback from our team on our annual goals. As an example, we would replicate that, change the date, and now you're not going back and going through the whole process of finding the questions for the form, because you're asking relatively the same questions and trying to get updated information on that. So you replicate the form and you go ahead and you send it off with a new date. So you've now created a template again, accessible, duplicate, send out to your team, and get your feedback within a timeline.
Yeah, we wanted to show, there's two other examples that if we get more and more deeper, a little bit more complex. So we had a client example where the client had people, like quite a few people, that were out in the field at construction sites, and they were gathering information on machines. They were then emailing that information back to the office, and somebody in the office was putting that information into an Excel document, and then they would sort of graph it, interpret it, and send it back to the person in the field. We're like, holy cow, like we can, like, let's automate this here. So we created a Microsoft form for the input of the data. And then we created a little app, and we worked with the client, kind of showed them how to do this. We created an app that plugged into Power BI. So instead of that, we just got rid of Excel altogether. We got rid of the manual stuff back in the office. The person that was out in the field put their information on their phone into that Microsoft form. It automatically put it into Power BI, charted it, graphed it, and gave them right away the feedback so that they can interpret that data and make decisions when they're out in the field. So not only did it give them better information so they could do their work better, it eliminated a whole bunch of work that the client was using. Here's Jermaine, do you want to take us through this other example?
So yeah, this work order, one of the ones that we created for another client, they have tons of work orders as an example that comes in. And they want to have persons out in the field who are typically working with clipboards and like writing down stuff on a physical paper and would have to enter the stuff at the end of the day or on the hour, every hour kind of scenario. We created a simple form that's attached to a flow that allows that person to put in the information for wherever they're at to create that work order, add files or the particular upload that they need, so pictures or anything that they would have taken at the site, add information into that and say, hey, you know, here's the specific project, or I want you to reference this PO related to this project or anything. Add some information in there, and then they hit submit. And what that does at that point is it says, hey, great, no worries. This stuff's now being submitted to the team that needs to review this data, who will then go ahead and create their work order internally and send it back out to the person on the at the client site, wherever they're at. And this was something that they were doing manually, where people were taking pictures of their clipboard and emailing the picture to their person internally. And then the project team was like, wait, I didn't get that one. And because, you know, you sent me 27 pictures today. And so they needed a way to streamline that and make it work well. And we worked with them on that to get that created. So,
and it was about like, it was like 60 hours of project work and $8,000 to create this, right? Like it's super complex to create this.
No, I think it was like 4 hours on a Wednesday or something, because you know, they knew what they wanted, and we just kind of had a solution that we could work with them on to do.
It's a really good point. Like this is straightforward stuff, right? It doesn't take long to put this sort of stuff together and create a form. So it's not like it's not the old days where you're paying programmers and tons of money and that sort of stuff. All right, let's get into business intelligence. So we talked about it a little bit there, but do you want to take this one, or should I take this one?
No. Well, you know what? Let me take this one, because I think you should take the last one.
Okay, good.
You're on this one. Business intelligence. We talked a little bit about this and having information and data injected from forms and other means of collecting data straight into the Power BI platform. One of the things that we do in our organization is that we look at each of our clients from a ticketing perspective. What are your biggest challenges? How are you operating? Is the work we're doing, our organization doing, helping to reduce your overall ticket footprint? And if you think about that from a support perspective, if you're in customer service or you're in sales and marketing, and you want to be able to look at your data and say, hey, you know what, over the last 10 months, I've seen an uptick in this particular type of way I get work, or I provide feedback, or I get new clients. When we look at that information, all of it gets injected and updated on a daily basis by itself as that data comes into our environment. And then we can look at that at any one point in time and say, hey, you know what, Mr. Client, we've looked at your overall challenges in your environment from a ticketing perspective. Your biggest concerns right now is dealing with email, internet, and firewall. And you can see over there on the top right that there's a nice trend line going downwards from the number of tickets or the number of issues the client's having. So we can take this information at a glance in less than 30 seconds and say, okay, I know where this client is and what's happening. And now I can go and address the challenges from a business perspective to say, let's help with your productivity by fixing these issues.
And one of the bits of feedback we got overwhelmingly in that poll question was people want to be able to get different applications talking to each other. So this is an example that we're using. If you use Power BI, it can link into API of different applications, so you can draw out the data that you use from multiple applications, and you can turn it into dashboards, useful information, that sort of thing, kind of like this one.
Yeah, whatever applies to your business. So we've got a second, this second example is a key one to take a look at. Let's say you're an automobile sales and you want to know what your top 3 performing car companies are. So you've got your Porsche, your Mercedes, your Rolls Royce. And then you say, well, you know what? I want to dig into Porsche and figure out with the Porsche what my top sales ones are. As a business owner, I'm going to go and I'm not going to stock my showroom with Cybertrucks. I'm going to go and stock my storeroom with more of the 911 GTS, because that's a big one. But then even more so, if I really wanted to sell my hottest item, I would go all the way to the top of the line and sell the most popular one. So immediately I can see that my investments in coming in and looking at what I provide to my customers, it's not worth it for me to have 5 of the types of Porsches in my showroom. I only need 3 because those 3 are my top sellers. And if somebody wants one of the other 2, hey, no problem. You can go to another dealership, because for me, my investment is in my highest sales pipeline. And this is just 1 or 2 ways you can parse the data to take a look at it. For Techify, as an example, we love to take a look at how we're approaching the changes and the things that we're doing relative to a client's environment, and how that client is seeing the value within the environment from an alignment perspective. Again, another great place to say, well, how is that technical alignment? Where are our clients on a roadmap? Here are the 10 things you need to do on a roadmap. How are the clients stacking up against the roadmap? So now we can have a good idea of what to talk to each client about and what to focus on.
And the more that you automate stuff and the better the data that you get, the more chance that you'll actually be able to afford a Rolls Royce at some point in the future. All right, let's go into our last example. We save what we think is the funnest one to last, and it's been something I've been waiting on, because I remember seeing the preview of it. Scheduling automation. It's a digital assistant that is actually useful. So here's the scenario. You spend a bunch of time like emailing back and forth, like, okay, hey, let's book a meeting for next week. How about 1 o'clock? No, that doesn't work. Okay, you email back a couple hours later when you're checking your email. Okay, how about 3 o'clock? How about that? How about this? And it's like back and forth, or even internally. You have people are like, okay, what time can we do that sales meeting, or what kind of time can we talk about this? So you can now do this through Cortana Scheduler. So you use Cortana. I'm sure most people have heard about Cortana. This is the Microsoft, version of Siri or Alexa, and it's pretty cool. And Jermaine and I have been testing it out, and we warned our staff. We said, we're going to torture you, and we're going to test this out internally. So here's an example of what you do. You're emailing Jack and Jill, and you're saying, hey, we had a great discussion. We want to discuss next steps. My assistant Cortana is going to find us a time. Hey, Cortana, schedule 45 minutes sometime next week. We need to meet in Redmond. And then what happens is Cortana will email different options for that meeting. She's going to email it. She's going to respond back and forth to the people that you're trying to schedule. She will respond right away. So the experience is better, right? So when Jack and Jill email, they're going to get a response right away from Cortana, as opposed to if you're in a meeting for the next 4 hours because you've got back-to-back virtual meetings all day long, and then they've got to wait. Cortana is doing that for you. And then once the meeting is agreed upon the time, Cortana also sends the meeting invite. So it's in everybody's calendar.
And lets you know it's in your calendar, eh?
Yeah, and then you just get the digital assistant email saying, hey, this is Cortana. You don't need to respond to this email. I've sorted out everything, and I've booked that meeting with Jack and Jill.
So that's fun. I mean, what you explained there speaks to you booking a meeting with someone external to your organization as well, right? So one of the fun parts too is if Cortana's got access to your internal calendars, which it would be if you set it up, and you say, hey guys, I'm late. Let's reschedule this meeting to 3 p.m. on Wednesday. Because all of that information's already in there, you can just say, put the at Cortana, hey Cortana, please schedule this meeting for us. Cortana will go and find a time on Wednesday for everybody involved internally without emailing anybody back and forth, because she already has access to the calendars. And then she'll send out a meeting invite and say, hey, okay guys, I've put you in on Wednesday for 25 minutes at this time. If you need this reschedule, let me know. So I responded to one of those and I was like, well, you know what? I can't make that. Can you pick a time between 9 and 5 on Friday? And Cortana disappears and comes back within, this is all happening within the space of, 30 seconds. And she sends it off and comes back with, okay, this has been scheduled. Here's your time. Let me know if you need anything else. And this all happens concurrently, immediately, and then, so I did it with one of our external clients as well, just to prove it works. And sent it off. Client gets back to me, says, hey, Jermaine, I picked this time. I was no clue what time she was talking about because I was in a meeting. And she's like, I picked this time and I'm going to send you a Teams invite. And then she responds and says, oh, I see your scheduler did it already automatically. Okay, talk to you then. And I'm like, and the whole time I'm in a meeting, I came out of the meeting and everything was scheduled, which was great.
Repetitive task, automated, right? Booking meetings, scheduling times, booking calls, that sort of stuff. I think that's great. So we're just about to wrap up. If you have questions, please put them into the Q&A panel. We're going to go into answering questions now. We went a couple minutes over, but I'm excited about Cortana. And listen, if anybody, I think most of the people on this call know how to reach us. But if you do want to, you can send an email. We can have our Cortana talk to your Cortana. We can book a meeting, and we can automate the process and spend our time doing high level business stuff. It'll be fun. It'll be fun to do. So let's. What do you think, Jermaine? We should probably get right into questions.
Absolutely. I wouldn't mind taking the first one. Paul's asked whether or not there's an additional cost for the scheduler. Answer is yes. This is again, it's meant for the busiest in your environment. It's about $12 a month added into your Microsoft subscription. You don't need it again for everyone in your environment, just the people who schedule the most meetings, really. So you can add that on, but it's about $12 a month.
Yeah, and I like the idea here. If you wanted to get a virtual assistant, even if you got a virtual assistant from abroad, you're talking about thousands of dollars a month versus now obviously Cortana is limited. Like this is a scheduling assistant and stuff like that. And if
doesn't get your laundry or your coffee, but
yeah, but neither would a virtual assistant, right? Because they're virtual.
That's fair.
A real assistant, yeah, they're going to cost a little bit more. But listen, we'll give you, we just started testing this out. It's a relatively new service. As you can tell, we're kind of excited about it because it's our latest shiny object, but it is saving us a ton of time and saves a little bit of that aggravation back and forth. We had another licensing related question from Kim about forms and data collection. And the question is, so the examples you showed within forms, those applications, is that or essentially what she's asking, do those applications, are they included in the Microsoft suite? Right? So
yeah, okay. Yeah. So
or is it a case like Cortana where you gotta spend a little bit extra money and
okay. Yeah, no, so the form stuff's all included in the 365 stack. Typically anything on the business standard and business premium and upwards have all of it available. And you can go ahead and create those flows and everything with forms. Polypoll, all of it's available with your current standard licensing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what we try to do here as much as possible in our webinars is show it to people ways that they can use the 365 suite that they're already paying for. Like take the technology that you're already paying for and use it better. There's a Power BI question here. How can I figure out? We've got a bunch of different applications we'd like to draw information for, create dashboards and metrics and stuff like that. How can we pull? How can we figure out if we can pull the data from different applications? How do we know if it will work with Power BI?
Oh, that's a good one. The Power BI platform, they'll list online. You can pull a Microsoft list of all the applications that they have APIs for. If your company or organization or group is large enough, you can actually submit an API request to Microsoft to tie it into Power BI. That typically goes for the Power BI enterprise users that you can put in and get your API built by Microsoft as well. So as an example, if you're asking, based on the questionnaire, it doesn't say whether or not you have a specialized ERP system or anything that you'd want to tie that data from. But if you do, and you're an enterprise version, they would actually work with you to build the API for that. So the answer is yes, you just have to figure out whether it's built already.
Yeah, you figure it's reasonably easy to figure that out from different applications and that sort of thing.
Oh, look, it looks like we answered a couple of the other questions with that one as well. I've got one here on setting up templates. Okay, so yeah, the Outlook templates, the question is asking whether or not you have to paste the templates into Outlook or if it only works on the desktop app. So yeah, the template section, you can have templates in the browser for Outlook and in the Outlook app on your desktop. Typically, the template information that you put in there, you can create it directly in the template window. You can actually create it in an email body and save that new email that you're creating as a template as well. So you have a couple of options. And if you want to create it in a Word document and then paste it in, you can do that as well.
Awesome. All right, we'll do one last call for questions. What we talk about with folks on a regular basis, just as a reminder, think about the repetitive task, the things that you do in your organization over and over again. We find we'll go in and we do these workflow, these processes of workflow discoveries, and we just kind of ask people, how do you do this? And so if you get a moment, ask your staff, how do we do this, right? How do we do expense reports? That's another one that we get asked sometimes, right? Hey, how can we, like, we have this manual process around expense report approvals and stuff like that. And you can create in SharePoint, you can create a flow, you can get that whole process around expense submission, approval, and get it to accounting. If you don't have a full scale ERP that'll do this for you, and you just want a simple solution. There's another example of a workflow automation. We didn't even talk about that one today.
Yeah, well, we got to save something for the questions we get via email and phone.
Awesome.
Okay, awesome.
So why don't we, so please, will you leave? You'll have a survey pop up. We will come back and do a 201 if there's enough interest. It seemed like we had lots of interest in this webinar, which was good. If there's more interest in doing a deeper dive onto automation, give us that feedback. When you leave, it'll pop up a little survey. Jermaine and I look through those surveys quite religiously and take that feedback and help build our topics for our next webinar. Speaking of the next webinar, what to do if you get hacked. Okay, yeah. March the 30th, incident response plans. That's the next one we got in our hopper. You can register for it at techify.ca/webinars.
And incidentally, as a reminder, that's where you can find all of the recordings for completed webinars. And the webinar from today will be up more likely by the end of the week.
Awesome. Thanks, Jermaine. Thanks, everybody, for joining today.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.